My wife demanded, "Your ailing mother can't move in, it's her or me." I replied, "I understand." Then I hired movers for her belongings. Her face when she realized whose name was on the deed. I'm 45 male, sitting in my living room, watching the soft evening light filter through the trees in the backyard. My mother, Eleanor, 72, is asleep in the downstairs bedroom, the gentle rhythm of her breathing a quiet comfort in the house. It feels like home should feel. It's a peace that has been bought at a very high price over the last 3 weeks. A peace that exists only because I finally accepted the terrible truth about my wife of 20 years, Helen, 42. My father passed away 6 months ago, and with his loss, my mother's health took a sharp decline. A lifetime of managing her diabetes became harder, her arthritis worsened, and a fall last month made it terrifyingly clear that she could no longer live alone in her rambling old house. My siblings and I had the heart-wrenching discussion every family dreads. The options were a nursing home, which felt like a sterile prison, or one of us taking her in. My brother lives in a 2-bedroom apartment 3 states away, and my sister is caring for a special needs child. I, on the other hand, have a large, 5-bedroom house with a fully equipped guest suite on the ground floor. For me, it wasn't a choice, it was a duty. A privilege, even. This woman raised me, sacrificed for me. Of course I would care for her. I prepared everything. I spoke with my mother's doctors, arranged for a home health aide to visit a few times a week, and drew up a financial plan. The last step was to sit down with Helen. I thought it would be a conversation about logistics. I was a fool. We sat at the large kitchen island, the same one she'd proudly shown off in a magazine spread about local homes. I laid out the situation, the doctor's recommendations, and my proposal for Mom to move into the guest suite. I expected concern, maybe some questions about the impact on our lives. What I got was a wall of ice. "Absolutely not," she said, her voice flat and cold. I was stunned. "What do you mean, absolutely not? Helen, she can't live by herself, she'll die." "Then she can go into a home," Helen replied, not even looking at me, instead inspecting her manicure. "That's what they're for. I will not have my life, my home, turned into a hospice. I will not have my social calendar dictated by a sick old woman. I will not have the smell of liniment and regret permeating my beautiful house." The cruelty of her words stole my breath. "Your beautiful house? Helen, this is my mother we're talking about." "And I'm your wife," she snapped, her eyes finally flashing with anger. "For 20 years I have built a life here. I host fundraisers, my book club meets here, we entertain your clients here. I will not become a full-time nursemaid. I refuse." The argument raged for an hour, a storm of her selfishness against my disbelief. It all came to a head when I finally said, "She is my mother, and she is coming to live here. It's not up for debate." Helen stood up, her face a mask of fury. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "Fine, you want to make a choice? Then make one. Your ailing mother can't move in, it's her or me." The ultimatum hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. In that moment, 20 years of marriage evaporated. I didn't see the woman I'd married. I saw a callous stranger who would see my mother wither away in an institution to avoid being inconvenienced. The choice she thought was so difficult was, in fact, the easiest one I'd ever had to make. My heart broke, but my path was crystal clear. I looked at her, my voice quiet but steady. "I understand." Helen's face relaxed into a smug, triumphant smile. She thought she'd won. She thought my quiet reply meant I'd capitulated, that I'd sacrifice my own mother for her comfort. She turned and flounced out of the room to go make a call, probably to one of her friends, to gloat. I remained at the kitchen island. I made 2 calls. The first was to a highly rated local moving company. "Yes," I said, "I need to schedule a packing and moving service for one person's belongings, the day after tomorrow if possible." The second call was to my mother. "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Don't you worry about a thing. Your room will be ready for you by the end of the week. Yes, I'm sure. It's all taken care of." Helen had given me a choice. I was simply honoring it. Update 1. The following 48 hours were a masterclass in passive aggression. Helen floated around the house with the air of a victorious queen, occasionally sighing dramatically and making comments about how difficult these decisions are, but necessary for the health of our marriage. She even printed out glossy brochures for several astoundingly expensive and distant assisted living facilities, leaving them on the coffee table as if she were helping. "I've been researching," she announced. "Only the best for Eleanor, of course." The hypocrisy was nauseating. I said nothing. I spent my time in the guest suite, deep cleaning, moving furniture, and putting fresh linens on the bed. I installed grab bars in the bathroom and a small television opposite the armchair. Helen saw me working and misinterpreted the entire situation, assuming I was preparing the room to stage my mother's furniture before shipping it off to her new institutional home. Her approval was almost as repulsive as her ultimatum. On Wednesday morning, right on schedule, the moving truck pulled into our long driveway. Helen saw it from the kitchen window and her face lit up. "Oh good, they're here," she chirped, walking to the front door to greet them. She saw it as the final step in her victory, the removal of the problem. "You must be here for Eleanor's things," she said graciously to the foreman, a large man with a clipboard. The foreman frowned, checking his paperwork. "No, ma'am. My work order is for the belongings of a Miss Helen Gable, packing and transport to a climate-controlled storage unit downtown." Helen's smile froze and then collapsed. "What? That's ridiculous. It's a mistake. My husband arranged this for his mother, Eleanor." "Is your husband David Sterling?" the foreman asked. "Yes," she said impatiently. "Well, Mr. Sterling is who booked the job, and the name on the order is Helen Gable. All rooms except the downstairs guest suite and the master office. That's the job," he finished, his tone leaving no room for argument. Helen's head whipped around to find me. I had been standing quietly in the entryway watching the scene unfold. Her face, a moment ago so full of smug satisfaction, was now a canvas of confusion and dawning horror. "David," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What is this? What have you done?" I stepped forward, my own voice calm and level, a stark contrast to the panic rising in her eyes. "You gave me an ultimatum, Helen. You told me I had to choose, my mother or you. I understood your position. You chose to make your presence here conditional on my mother's absence. You chose me over her. So I am respecting your choice. You chose to leave. I've hired these professionals to make your departure as seamless as possible." For a second, she just stared, unable to process the words. Then, the dam of her composure broke. "Leave?" she shrieked, the sound echoing in the high-ceilinged foyer. "Leave? You can't kick me out of my own house." This was the moment, the final, terrible revelation. "That's the core of your misunderstanding, Helen," I said, my voice filled with a sadness that surprised even me. "It isn't your house." I walked into my office and came back with a folder. From it, I pulled a copy of the property deed. "I bought this house with the inheritance my father left me a year before you and I were even married. The title, the deed, everything has always been solely in my name. It was, and is, my separate property. You made it clear you would not live under this roof with my mother. My mother is moving in this Friday. Therefore, you cannot live here. You made the choice. I am simply dealing with the consequences." I handed her the paper. She stared at it, her face ashen. The legal jargon was dense, but the two words she could clearly read at the top were my name, and my name alone. The foundation of her entire life, the beautiful house she showed off, the status it gave her, crumbled to dust in her hands. She had played her ultimate card, her Queen of Hearts, only to find out I held the entire deck. Update 2. Helen's reaction was explosive. Her shrieks about her house turned into sobs of betrayal and then into threats. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "My husband is trying to illegally evict me," she screamed into the receiver. The movers, to their credit, had paused their work and were standing awkwardly by their truck, waiting for instructions. I calmly told the foreman to have his crew take a break, that there was a domestic issue that needed to be resolved. 2 police officers arrived about 20 minutes later. Helen met them on the lawn, launching into a tearful, dramatic performance about her cruel husband throwing her out for his sick old mother. The officers listened patiently, then came to speak with me at the front door. I invited them in and calmly laid out the facts. I showed them the deed to the house, clearly indicating my sole ownership prior to our marriage. I showed them my marriage certificate. I explained the situation. My wife gave me an ultimatum that if my ailing mother moved in, she would leave. I accepted her decision, and my mother is moving in. I have arranged and paid for movers to transport her belongings to a storage unit, and she is welcome to stay with friends or family while we sort out the divorce." The officers exchanged a look. This was not the simple eviction she had claimed. One of them explained to Helen, as gently as possible, "Ma'am, this is a civil matter. Since you are not on the deed, you don't have an ownership claim to the physical house. We can't force him to let you stay. We recommend you contact an attorney." Defeated and humiliated, Helen finally seemed to realize she had no power here. She called her sister, and within the hour, she was gone, leaving in a storm of slammed doors and muttered curses. I told the movers to proceed. For the next 5 hours, they professionally and efficiently packed 20 years of Helen's life into boxes. The house felt emptier, but also lighter. The next day, the legal salvos began. I received a furious letter from a high-powered divorce attorney she had retained. It demanded her immediate reinstatement into the marital home, an obscene amount of monthly spousal support, half the value of the house, and a litany of other entitlements. My lawyer, a calm and methodical man I had fortunately consulted years ago for estate planning, was unfazed. He sent back a concise response. Included were a certified copy of the deed, financial statements proving the house was purchased with non-marital inherited funds, a formal offer of divorce settlement, which included a generous but legally appropriate division of our actual marital assets, the savings, retirement accounts, and investments we had accumulated during our marriage. It also included an offer for time-limited, rehabilitative alimony, based on the assumption that she, a healthy and college-educated 42-year-old, was perfectly capable of working. The smear campaign started almost immediately. Helen painted herself as the ultimate victim. Friends of hers, people who had eaten at my table, posted veiled messages of support for her on social media, talking about monsters who discard their loyal wives. I received angry texts. I explained the truth, the ultimatum, to my real friends and family. They were horrified on my behalf and rallied around me. Amidst this maelstrom, on a quiet Friday afternoon, I brought my mother home. I settled her into her new room, the same one Helen's designer shoes had been packed out of just 2 days prior. Mom felt terribly guilty about the turmoil, but I held her hand and told her the truth. "This isn't your fault, Mom. This was caused by a choice Helen made. You are home. You are safe. That's all that matters." That evening, we ate dinner together in the quiet kitchen, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt filled with unconditional love. Final update. It's been 8 months since the day the movers came. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. It was an ugly, drawn-out battle. Not because Helen had a strong legal case, but because she refused to accept reality. Her lawyer tried every trick in the book to lay claim to the house. They argued commingling of assets because we'd done renovations, but my lawyer had meticulous records showing those were paid from my personal salary, not joint accounts. They argued emotional distress. They argued everything. In the end, the law was the law. The house was mine. The premarital inherited asset was protected. The final settlement was very close to what my lawyer initially proposed. Helen received a fair 50% of the actual marital assets, which was a substantial 6-figure sum. She was also awarded rehabilitative alimony for 3 years, giving her a runway to get back on her feet and find a job. It was far from the multi-million-dollar windfall she was counting on from her house. She now lives in a trendy but small 2-bedroom apartment downtown. I hear through the grapevine that she is struggling to adjust to the significant downgrade in her lifestyle. Her high society friends, the ones for whom she was so terrified of being inconvenienced, have mostly drifted away. Without the grand house to host parties and the husband to fund her life, she is far less interesting to them. She had to get a job in marketing, the career she abandoned 20 years ago. By all accounts, she is miserable, bitter, and tells anyone who will listen that I stole her life from her. My life, in contrast, has become smaller, quieter, and infinitely richer. Caring for my mother in her final chapter of life is not easy. There are hard days, there are moments of fear and sadness, but there are also moments of profound grace. We spend evenings looking through old photo albums. I make her my father's favorite soup. We watch old movies together. I am giving her the gift of dying with dignity, surrounded by love, in a home, not an institution. It is the most important work I will ever do. Helen thought she was giving me an ultimatum between a wife and a mother. But she was wrong. She was giving me a choice between a life built on the shallow foundations of social status and conditional affection, and a life built on the bedrock of duty, compassion, and unconditional love. She thought her ultimatum was a display of power, but it was just a revelation of her character. The most satisfying part of this whole ordeal wasn't kicking her out or winning. It was the quiet realization that by honoring the cruel choice she gave me, I had inadvertently chosen a better, more authentic life for myself. I chose my mother. And in doing so, I chose my own humanity.